I'm showing you these in a separate video because I think they deserve a bit more attention. So I'm going to show you 3 ways of how to fasten on and off and why and how they are used. The first one is very basic. You use this one if you're basting a long line and you want to take out the thread later on and you want your starting points and your ending points to be visible. The second one is not as strong as the first one, but it does hold the layers well together and also gives you the flexibility of pulling the threads out if you need to, or if they catch to something and they pull, they don't rip or distort or bruise your fabric. You're more likely to use the second one with something like a padding stitch, where you have so many other stitches around your starting point and your ending point that there isn't going to be a lot of pressure around it, and so therefore the layers are not going to move and less chance of your thread actually coming out. It will only happen if you pull it out or if it catches exactly in front of where you started or where you ended, which is not so likely to happen. It's also good if you're basting something and you're then after that sewing something permanently and you want to take that basting out immediately. You can do that by using this type of basting, and that would give you decent results as well, because then you can immediately pull your thread out without having to snip the thread. And the third one is something you would only use if you're permanently sewing something and you know it's very unlikely for that area to be altered, because the starting point and the ending points are going to be hidden and it's going to be like really well secured. So taking them out is risky business. So let's start with the first one. Obviously, to do the first one, we need to know how to make a knot. And the way we make a knot is very simple. You would put the end of the thread on your index finger and put your thumb on top of it. Wrap the thread around your index finger once and then pull your index finger back while at the same time pushing your thumb forward. When you do that, you notice that this thread is going to wrap around itself. Don't let go once that happens. Pull your hand, put your middle finger on top of this knot and pull your thread. Once you pull your thread, you get a big knot. This big knot is going to make sure that the knot doesn't go through the fibers if there is any pressure on the thread. Because the last thing you want to do is either look for a hidden knot or try to take a hidden knot out. Not really a good idea to spend your time on. So, once you've made a knot, suppose you want to sew from this point to this point. What you're going to do is you put your needle in there and take a bite. After you take a bite, of course, the knot is going to stop the thread from moving any further. But don't just rely on the knot. What I would suggest is to take another bite on the same point so that you also have a back tack. Now, this back tack is going to prevent any further pressure on the knot, and so if the thread gets pulled, the pressure is going to be, or the tension is going to be distributed between the back tack and the knot, and therefore you run less risk for the knot going in between the layers. So once you've done that, suppose you do, your running stitch or whatever stitch, you could do this with any type of stitch, and you want to finish off. Very simple. All you need to do is to take 2 bites or 3 bites on the same point. So 1 loop and a second loop. So this would be well secured for the majority of lines that you're going to be basting. If there is an area that you think, okay, there's going to be so much pressure or movement there, then you can do, 2 more times, fasten off 4 times or even 5 times. But for most areas, fastening off twice is more than enough. So that's one way. Now the second way is, like I said, less secured, and it goes like this. You want to start here, but you don't just put the needle in there. You're going to start further out, and you put the needle in, and bring the needle out on the point that you want to start, like so. Pull your thread so that the end of the thread goes in between the layers and is hidden there, and then go right behind the point where you just came out, go through all the layers and take a bite. Gently pull, and now this thread is more or less invisible. If it was the same color, it would be. Do your running stitch or padding stitch or cross stitch or whatever. And again, if you want to finish here, go right into that point, come out, slightly further out, and go right behind where you just came out and take a bite. Pull the thread through, gently pull, and snip your thread. You can see that this is a very tiny knot. If this was the same color and a finer thread, it would be invisible. Now, like I said, if there's going to be more stitches around this area, then this layer is not really going to move a lot. Therefore, it's ideal to use for padding stitches because it also allows your padding stitches on the lapels and the canvas to look so much more professional, because you don't see those barbaric back tacks that you normally would see, and it's a flatter finish. So, rubbing this is not going to do much. The thread is not really going to come out easily unless you really pull it. And if it's a sensitive area like the lapels, you don't want, if in case your thread pulls or catches, for the entire thing to contract. So in that case, the fastening on and off will just, come out and prevent your materials from being damaged or bruised. The third one is, I would say, exactly the same as this one, apart from the fact that instead of going, once into the same point and then coming out and continuing, you would go back and forwards to make sure that that thing is, permanently secured. So how you would do that is like the following. You, again, start off from far away, come out the point where you need to come out. Once you've pulled your thread through and it's invisible, you can either go forwards or backwards. I usually go backwards and go right behind the same point that you started. Take a bite and again come out slightly further away, like so. Gently pull, not too much, because it's not yet secured well enough. And then again, you repeat. You then go right behind this point, come out the point where you want to start, and gently pull. So now you have gone once, twice, and then 3 times, or 4 times, 5 times, however you want. And now when you want to continue, you then go back right behind the point you came out and start your sewing. So now this is well secured. This is difficult to take out, so be very careful if you want to undo this. You do your running stitch, padding stitch, whatever stitch, and again, if you want to, you can either bring your needle out here or put your needle in here. Doesn't really matter much. So suppose you want to now back tack, what you would do is, again, go right behind where you just came out, move back to the point where you want to finish, and come out right at that point. So gently pull your thread and then repeat that process one more time. So you go right behind the point where you just came out, move slightly further out, and now you can move forward. So again, go behind the thread and bring the needle out somewhere else. And now you can snip this thread, and that's it. So here you have 3 ways of fastening on and off, and now you know how to do them.